When we study the history of Memphis, Tennessee, there is pre-April 4th, 1968, and there was post-April 4, 1968. Dr. King still had his nonviolent resistance following, but after the aftermath of the assassination of Malcolm X, you have the formation of groups such as the Black Panther Party for self-defense. You have leaders such as Stokely Carmichael calling out for Black power to take control of their own neighborhoods and communities. So there was a split in which ideology and philosophy was the most effective way to combat civil rights in America. Martin Luther King began to be overshadowed by these young Black militants. For this time, he was not even receiving a very high approval rating in the Black community. It was as if the African American community in some ways turned their back. This was only supposed to be a detour for Martin Luther King Jr. coming to Memphis. He had planned to come here. He was going to lead a march, and then his ultimate goal was to get to Washington, D.C. later that month for his proposed Poor People's Campaign. Segregationists and those that are opposing Dr. King's mission at this time are saying that if Dr. King cannot have a controlled march in Memphis, there is no way, absolutely, that he's going to be successful in Washington. And Dr. King is extremely taken aback by this. Not only that, but he has a rift in his own party and group. There are members of the SCLC that want to go to Washington. There are others in the SCLC that believe that they should be here in Memphis. And so he's under a great amount of pressure, scrutiny, and stress during the weeks leading up to his assassination.
From the day he was born, Martin Luther King Jr. worked to inspire everyone he came in contact with. He did this in order to gain equal rights for people of all races, so no man would be treated with injustice. Dr. King believed in protesting without violence. He used his words to express his opinion instead of his fists. His journey began when he graduated from Morehouse College in Georgia. He was inspired by Benjamin Mays, the college president, for his work as a leader of the African American civil rights movement. This movement took place for decades in the southern states as protesters fought for the equality and integrity of African American men, women, and children. He became a pastor at his local church to help begin his fight against segregation. Dr. King believed that all men and women should not be separated based on ethnicity, religion, or race. Several years later, he became the leader of the Montgomery bus boycott in honor of Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat for a white man. With this act of insubordination, his popularity skyrocketed in the southern states that still practice segregation. On August 28, 1963, he led a group of men and women against segregation through Washington, D.C. The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom was a speech given in support of the Civil Rights Act, which had been passed into a law, but was not being implemented in all states. Dr. King gave this speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. This famous speech is also known as the I Have a Dream speech. The speech was heard by approximately 250,000 people of all different races and opinions on the dispute. On December 10, 1964, he received the Nobel Peace Prize for his influential speeches and protests. Later in his fight for freedom, he had led thousands of protesters through Alabama over 50 miles from Selma to Montgomery to show others that African Americans deserved the right to vote. Despite his many accomplishments in the civil rights movement, Dr. King was unfortunately assassinated by James Earl Ray on April 4, 1968. Even though he was killed by someone who didn't believe in his ideas, Dr. King's movements inspired others to carry out his mission of being able to transform the jangling discourse of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.